15 years of marriage should have meant trust, intimacy, and understanding. Gerald truly believed he knew Olivia, her favorite music, her laugh, the way she always brushed her hair behind her ear when deep in thought. That October night, their home glowed with soft candlelight, the scent of grilled salmon lingering in the air and white lilies, the flowers she adored, brightening every corner. It was supposed to be a celebration. Olivia had finally achieved her lifelong dream, a state judicial appointment. Gerald had spent hours preparing everything, determined to make the evening special, to remind her of how far they had come together. He thought it was a shared victory, the culmination of late nights, sacrifices, teamwork. But as Olivia entered the kitchen after dinner, her movements felt mechanical, almost rehearsed. Her hands trembled slightly as she put away her champagne flute, her expression unreadable. Then, without emotion, she said the words that shattered him. "Gerald, we need to talk about our future." He smiled weakly, thinking she meant vacations or plans for their daughter, Sophie. Instead, Olivia's tone grew formal, clinical, like she was reading from a legal script. She wanted a separation. She said it calmly, almost kindly, as though ending a marriage was just another logical decision. Her voice carried no warmth, no hesitation, only a cold certainty. Gerald could barely breathe. He leaned against the counter, the room spinning as she explained they'd grown apart, that she needed to move forward. He wanted to ask why, but even before the words formed, he knew she had already planned this. Every word was measured, every sentence practiced. And when he asked if there was someone else, her brief pause, barely a second, was all the answer he needed. That night, the house that once held laughter and warmth became hollow. The flowers, the candles, the dinner, all turned into cruel reminders that the celebration had never been for them. It had been Olivia's farewell. 3 sleepless nights passed. Gerald moved through his days like a ghost, going to work, pretending to function, while his mind replayed every detail of that night. The house was quiet, too quiet. Then, on the 4th morning, there was a knock on the door. Standing outside was Tom, the elderly neighbor who spent most days tending his roses and watching the street. Tom looked uneasy. He twisted his baseball cap in his hands and said softly, "Gerald, I don't mean to intrude, but I think there's something you should know." He hesitated, then told Gerald what he'd seen over the past several months. Olivia leaving the house at odd hours, getting into a sleek black car that always parked at the corner. Once, maybe twice a month, always when Gerald was away on business. And once, Tom said, he'd seen her with the same man entering the Hampton Inn nearby. Gerald's world tilted. After Tom left, he stood motionless, every fragment of the past year clicking into place like a grim puzzle. The new jewelry he hadn't bought, the mysterious trips, the growing distance. He sat down, numb, then something inside him shifted. That evening, he turned on Olivia's old laptop, the one she'd left behind. It still had her cloud backup synced. For hours, he combed through files, emails, and deleted folders. Then he found them. Dozens of messages between Olivia and Charles Whitmore, an influential corporate attorney from Cleveland. At first, they were professional, discussing legal cases. But soon, the tone changed. Compliments, then flirtation, then intimacy. Gerald read in silence as their secret life unfolded across the screen. Weekend trips, hotel stays, whispered plans for the future, and then the message that broke him completely. "Once the appointment is confirmed, I'll finally end it with Gerald. He's been useful, but it's time I move on, with someone on my level." Gerald read those words again and again. Useful. That's what 15 years, a shared home, and a child had meant to her. Just a stepping stone. He didn't shout or cry. He simply began saving everything. Screenshots, backups, timestamps, his accountant's discipline taking over. Because now it wasn't about heartbreak. It was about truth. The next morning, Gerald called Jake, a private investigator he'd once hired for corporate fraud work. Calm and deliberate, he explained the situation. Within 48 hours, Jake had photos. Olivia and Charles entering and leaving the Hampton Inn together, 4 separate times. There were also phone logs, calls and messages, some at midnight, others while Gerald was home with Sophie. It was irrefutable. Gerald felt no rage, just a sharp, clean clarity. That evening, he made 3 precise moves. He emailed Patricia Whitmore, Charles's wife, a respected prosecutor. He attached the evidence and wrote, "You deserve to know." Then he sent the same evidence to the State Bar Ethics Board, noting potential misuse of political influence in Olivia's appointment. Finally, he forwarded everything to a local journalist who specialized in uncovering scandals in public offices. 3 quiet clicks, and the truth was set free. That night, he called Olivia and asked her to come over, said they needed to discuss custody. When she arrived, confident and composed, she froze at the sight of the documents spread across the living room table. Emails, photos, hotel receipts, all organized chronologically. Her voice broke. "Gerald, you didn't—" "I did," he replied, calm but firm. "Because I deserved the truth." She begged, pleaded, offered to make the divorce easier, promised to let him keep the house, even full custody. But Gerald didn't want bargains. "This isn't revenge," he said softly. "It's justice. You made your choices, Olivia. Now you'll face them." And she did. Within a week, the story exploded across local and state news. Newly appointed judge linked to affair with influential attorney. Headlines swirled, investigations opened, reputations crumbled. Patricia filed a public punishing divorce. Charles lost clients, Olivia lost credibility. She kept her title, but her future was gone. Her name now a whispered cautionary tale in courthouse halls. Gerald didn't smile when he read the news. He simply closed the laptop and exhaled. For the first time in months, he felt something close to peace. 4 years later, the house no longer felt haunted. The white lilies were gone, replaced by yellow roses, Sophie's favorite. Gerald had rebuilt everything, his business thriving, his reputation stronger than ever. He'd become known as a man of quiet strength, someone who'd survived betrayal without bitterness. In the 3rd year after the divorce, he met Rebecca, Sophie's literature teacher. She was warm, grounded, with laughter that filled every empty space Olivia had left behind. Their relationship grew slowly, naturally, built on trust rather than ambition. Sophie adored her, and for the first time, Gerald saw real happiness reflected in his daughter's eyes again. Olivia's life, meanwhile, was a shadow of what she'd imagined. Still a judge, yes, but isolated. No promotions, no invitations to political galas. Her colleagues treated her politely, never warmly. Charles had moved to another state, his career barely surviving. Patricia's divorce had stripped him of nearly everything. Olivia lived alone now in a small apartment, occasionally sending bitter messages to Gerald, messages he never answered. One bright Saturday afternoon, while Gerald and Sophie planted roses in the garden, his phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but the voice was instantly recognizable. Olivia, broken, hesitant. She asked to speak with Sophie. He handed the phone over silently. Sophie's voice stayed calm, distant, polite. When she returned, she simply said, "She's fine, Dad," and went back to her flowers. Gerald looked around, the sun filtering through the trees. Rebecca waving from the kitchen, laughter drifting through the open window. For the first time, the weight of the past felt light. He'd lost everything once, but from that wreckage, he'd built something real. As the yellow roses bloomed that spring, Gerald realized the truth he'd been chasing all along. The best revenge isn't destruction, it's peace. To live well, to love honestly, to rise above the pain and build a life so full that the past loses its power. Olivia had chosen ambition over love. Gerald had chosen integrity over pride. And in the end, that made all the difference.